Okay, so we are starting with Discourse 6, still in the Bhagavata Mahatmyam from the Padma Purana. If anybody's following in the Gita Press translation, we're on page 30, well, end of page 37, about to be page 38 in the English edition. Okay, so Discourse 6 is on the procedure of hearing Srimad Bhagavata in a week in detail. The Kumaras began again. Next, we shall discourse to you in detail on the procedure of hearing Srimad Bhagavata in a week. This procedure has been declared as ordinarily observable with the help of associates and earthly possessions. To begin with, one should specially call an astrologer with due respect and inquire of him a propitious day and time for commencing a 7 days session for hearing the Srimad Bhagavata. He should, he being the person who's organizing this, set apart as much wealth as is generally spent over a wedding. The months of Bhadrapada, Ashvina, and Kartika, Margashirsha, Ashada, and Sravana, corresponding roughly to August, September, and October, November, June, and July. These are harbingers of moksha for those commencing an exposition of Srimad Bhagavata during any of these months. They don't exactly correspond to those Gregorian months, since, of course, it's the lunar calendar versus the solar, but roughly. Even in these months, O Narada, hours which are worth eschewing must be avoided under all circumstances. Nay, others too who are industrious should be enlisted as one's associates in this undertaking. Again, a message should be particularly sent to all places saying that an exposition of Srimad Bhagavata is being arranged and that people should attend with their families. Some people stand remote from the stories of Sri Hari, as well as from the chanting of Sri Vishnu's names and praises. It should be so arranged that they, as well as women and those belonging to the Shudra community and other such people, may be apprised of the fact. Letters should be addressed everywhere only to the votaries of Lord Vishnu who have renounced all worldly attachments and are keen on chanting the divine names and glories. The wording of the letter has been suggested as follows. For 7 days, an exceedingly rare congregation of pious men is expected to meet, and there will be an exposition of Srimad Bhagavata full of unprecedented charm. You too are requested to come soon in order to quaff the nectar of Srimad Bhagavata, possessed as you are of an insatiate longing for such nectar, love being foremost in your mind. Even if perchance you have no time to spare, nonetheless, at all events, you must come at least for 1 day only, for even an instant on this occasion is most difficult to get. Invitation should be politely extended to them in these words, and one should keep ready places of abode for all who come. The hearing of Srimad Bhagavata is commended at a place of pilgrimage, or in a woodland, or even at one's own residence. That site should be selected for the exposition where an extensive ground is available, because you have to seat a lot of people, I suppose. Removing the household effects, if it is arranged in one's own house, one should keep them in a corner of the house, and the ground should be cleaned and swept, plastered with cow dung and clay, and decorated with paintings of minerals dissolved in water, like rangoli on the floor. 5 days in advance, one should get together with zeal coverings to be spread on the ground for the visitors to sit on, and a tall yet temporary shed should be erected and decked with fresh stems of bananas. The shed should be roofed with an awning and decorated all round with green leaves, flowers, and fruits. Flags should be planted on all sides and adorned with decorations of various kinds. On a higher level within the shed, 7 spacious divisions should be made, one higher than the other, each representing one of the 7 spheres into which the universe stands divided, and Brahmanas, as well as those who have shaken off worldly attachments, should be seated there after due persuasion. First of all, seats should be arranged for them one after another, and then one should get ready an excellent seat for the exponent of Srimad Bhagavata. If the exponent is to sit facing the north, the chief listener should in that case sit actually facing the east. And if the exponent is to sit facing the east, the chief listener should then sit facing the north. Or if such an arrangement is not possible, the space intervening the worshipful exponent and the worshipper listener should be considered to be the east. Such is the ruling given about the hearers by those possessing authoritative knowledge concerning the time and place, etc., of hearing an exposition of Srimad Bhagavata. A Brahmana who is a votary of Lord Vishnu and has shaken off all worldly attachments, who is capable of expounding the Vedas and other scriptures, is expert in giving illustrations to bring home a truth, is discerning and altogether free from cravings, should be selected as the exponent of Srimad Bhagavata. Those who are bewildered by their attraction towards diverse courses of conduct, are fond of women, and preach heresies should be avoided as disqualified for an exposition of Srimad Bhagavata, the scripture associated with the name of Sri Sukha, even if they are learned. By the side of the exponent, just by way of helping him, should be installed another learned man of the same caliber, capable of resolving doubts and intent on enlightening the public. In order to undertake the sacred vow of expounding Srimad Bhagavata, the prospective exponent should have his head and chin, etc., shaved on the eve of the day when the exposition is to commence. Easing his nature at daybreak, he should duly take a bath. Finishing with zeal his Sandhya prayers and other devotions in a short form every day, he should particularly worship Lord Ganesha for warding off obstacles in the way of the exposition. Having duly gratified the manes, that's the Pitris, the ancestors, through oblations of water. Just a second. I had left the page open last time and I need to reload the next page. Okay, yeah. So having duly gratified the Pitris through oblations of water, he should go through a course of expiatory rites for the sake of purification of himself, and should draw a mystical diagram, a yantra, and install on it Sri Hari in the form of an image or the Shalagrama stone. He should then, with the chanting of mantras, successively offer to Sri Krishna through that image the 16 prescribed courses of worship, including pradakshina, walking round the deity clockwise, and salutation, and at the end of the worship, address the following prayer to him: Rescue, O storehouse of compassion, from the ocean of mundane existence, my wretched self, sunk in that ocean of metempsychosis, my body having been seized by the alligator in the shape of infatuation for action. Worship should be zealously offered next with due ceremony and love to the copy of Srimad Bhagavata as well, by means of articles including incense and light. Holding a coconut in the hollow of his joined palms, he should then duly offer salutation, and then with a cheerful mind alone the following prayer should be addressed to Srimad Bhagavata. For here is Sri Krishna himself, manifest before us under the name of Srimad Bhagavata. I have sought you, O Lord, for being rescued from the ocean of mundane existence. This aspiration of mine may kindly be fulfilled by you in every way without impediment, as a matter of fact, since I am your servant, O Krishna. Having addressed this piteous appeal to Sri Krishna in the form of Srimad Bhagavata, he should next worship the prospective exponent, and fully adorning him with wearing apparel and jewels, should further duly extol him at the end of the worship, as follows: O manifestation of Shuka, expert as you are in enlightening others and well versed in the entire range of sacred lore, eradicate my ignorance by revealing to me this story in the form of Srimad Bhagavata. Before him, then, a vow should be gladly taken by the chief listener for his own spiritual good, and it should be truly observed by him at all events to the best of his ability for a week. 5 Brahmanas should be engaged as priests for averting interruption in the exposition. They should mutter prayers to Sri Hari by repeating the 12-syllabled mantra, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Bowing to the Brahmanas and other votaries of Lord Vishnu, as well as to those engaged in chanting the names and praises of Sri Hari, and duly worshipping them, he should himself occupy his seat only when permitted by them. He who, giving up the thought of the world, riches, and other possessions, house and children, focuses his mind on the exposition alone with a guileless heart, secures the highest reward. Starting the exposition from sunrise, the highly intelligent exponent should properly expound the story in a moderate tone for 3 praharas and a half, 10 hours and a half. At midday, a pause should be made in the exposition for about an hour. During that interval, the votaries of Lord Vishnu should, as a matter of fact, take to the chanting of the Lord's names and glories, in consonance with the theme of exposition of that day. For controlling the urge of the evacuation of one's bowels and bladder, a light diet is, as a matter of fact, conducive to happiness. One who seeks to hear an exposition of Srimad Bhagavata should accordingly take his meal only once a day and take only such food as is fit to be offered as an oblation to the sacred fire. He should hear the exposition abstaining from food for one full week, provided he has the stamina to do it, or he can do so with ease, living on ghee or milk alone. Or he may live on fruits and vegetables, etc., or even on one species of cereals alone with vegetable, etc. In order to be able to listen to the exposition, one should take such a vow as can be easily observed. I should certainly prefer taking a meal if it would enable one to listen to an exposition of Srimad Bhagavata. A fast is not commended if it stands in the way of hearing the exposition. Now hear, O Narada, the rules of conduct that should be followed by those who have taken a vow to hear Srimad Bhagavata in the course of a week. Those who have not been duly initiated into the worship of Lord Vishnu or received from a qualified guru a mantra sacred to him are not eligible for hearing an exposition of Srimad Bhagavata. A man who has taken a vow to hear an exposition of Srimad Bhagavata should constantly, during the period of that 1 week, observe continence, sleep on the floor or on a plank bed, but in no case on a bedstead, and take his meals on leaves joined together or on a single leaf if it is big enough at the end of the exposition for the day. One who has taken the aforesaid vow should always avoid, during that week, pulses, honey, oil, and heavy food, as well as such edibles as are vitiated by impure associations. For example, a fruit with blood, red peel, or kernel, such as cherry or ripe tomato, or one with a fleshy kernel, such as the jackfruit, and cooked food which has been kept overnight. A man who has taken the aforesaid vow should eschew concupiscence, anger, arrogance, pride, jealousy, and greed, too, as well as hypocrisy, infatuation, and hatred. He who has taken the aforesaid vow should abstain from reviling the Vedas, the votaries of Lord Vishnu and the Brahmanas, one's elders or preceptor, those who are vowed to the service of the cow, as well as womankind, the king, and exalted souls. He who has taken the aforesaid vow should not speak to a woman in menstruation, a member of the lowest classes, a mlecha, here defined as a beef eater, an apostate, a member of the twice born classes who have not been invested with the sacred thread, though grown to a mature age, a Brahmana hater, and those who are outside the pale of Vedic religion. Similarly, he who is vowed to the hearing of Srimad Bhagavata should observe truthfulness, external and internal purity, compassion, silence, straightforwardness, modesty in his dealings, and likewise practice liberal mindedness. A pauper, one suffering from consumption, any other ailing man, a wretch, a man of sinful deeds, one who is issueless and a seeker of liberation, should hear this story. It should be heard with zeal by a woman who has prematurely ceased to menstruate, or who has borne only one child and ceased to conceive further, or even by her who is barren, also by her whose children have died, as well as by the woman who miscarries. If it is heard with due ceremony by those enumerated in verses 51 and 52, in other words, by the people we just enumerated, the hearing bids fair to yield them a fruit which is absolutely free from decay. The superb and divine story of Srimad Bhagavata is capable of conferring on its hearers the fruit of tens of millions of sacrificial performances. Having thus observed the rules of conduct prescribed for this vow of hearing Srimad Bhagavata in 1 week, the chief listener should then perform the rite concluding the vow. By those seeking the special fruit of it, this rite should be performed just on the lines of the rite of concluding the fast on the Janmashtami day, the 8th of the dark half of the lunar month of Bhadrapada, the birth anniversary of Lord Sri Krishna. In that case, however, in the case, however, of devotees claiming nothing as their own, it is not ordinarily imperative that the formality of concluding this vow should be gone through. They are hallowed by the very process of hearing, disinterested votaries as they are of Lord Vishnu. When the 7 days sacrificial session, consisting of an exposition of Srimad Bhagavata, is over, worship should presently be offered by the listeners to the book, as well as to the expositor with great devotion. Remnants of food, basil leaves, that meaning tulsi leaves, and wreaths of flowers offered to the deity should forthwith be distributed to the listeners, and the chanting of the Lord's names and glories, sweetened by the sounding of wooden tom-toms and the striking of cymbals, should then be resorted to. The chief listener should make the audience utter with him shouts of triumph and words of greetings and raise blasts of conches, and money as well as food should be dealt out to brahmanas and mendicants. If the chief listener is a man who has renounced the world, the Gita should be read the following day. If he is a householder, in that case, oblations should be poured into the sacred fire by way of expiation for any sin, voluntarily or involuntarily committed in the course of the act of hearing. With the utterance of each verse of Book 10 of Shrimad Bhagavata, rice boiled in milk with sugar, honey, and ghee and mixed with sesamum seeds and food grains, barley, etc., should be consigned to the fire. Or, as an alternative, the chief listener should perform the Havana with a concentrated mind along with the muttering of the holy Gayatri, Srimad Bhagavata, the supreme Purana, being in essence the same as the Gayatri. In the event of his being incapable of performing the Havana, the big fire ceremony, a wise man should give away to Brahmanas materials fit to be consigned to the sacred fire in order to achieve its fruit. In order to make amends for the various shortcomings that might have marred the performance, as well as for neutralizing the faults of deficiency and excess committed, he should read the Vishnu Sahasranama, 1,000 names of Lord Vishnu, catalogued in the Mahabharata, Padma Purana, and other sacred books. Through that, every performance bids fair to become fruitful, inasmuch as there is nothing more efficacious than that, the Vishnu Sahasranama. He should then feed 12 brahmanas with sweets and rice boiled in milk with sugar, and give away gold and a cow to brahmanas for the completion of the sacred vow. Having got prepared a seat of gold weighing 3 tolas, if his means allow it, he should install on it the book of Srimad Bhagavata written in beautiful letters. Duly worshipping the book by invoking in it the presence of the deity ensouling it, and through other forms of worship, including a gift of money, the wise listener should present it to the expositor of restrained mind when he has been worshipped by offering wearing apparel, ornaments, sandal paste, etc. By doing so, he will be rid of the shackles of birth and death. On the procedure of hearing an exposition of Srimad Bhagavata, which purges one of all sins, being thus completed, the blessed and glorious Bhagavata Purana yields the desired fruit and proves to be the means of securing religious merit, self gratification, worldly possessions, and liberation. There is no doubt about it. The Kumaras went on. In this way, everything has been pointed out to you. What more do you wish to hear? Through the glorious Bhagavata alone, both worldly enjoyment and liberation are brought within one's palm. Sutta resumed. Having spoken thus, the aforesaid exalted souls, Sanaka and his 3 brothers, expounded with due ceremony in the presence of all living beings, who listened with a restrained mind for 7 days, the sacred story of Srimad Bhagavata, which absolves one of all sins and bestows on the hearer both enjoyment and liberation. Then they extolled Lord Vishnu, the Supreme Person. At the end of it, Jnana, Vairagya, and Bhakti felt highly invigorated and attained exuberant youth, which ravished the mind of all living beings. On his ambition having been realized, Narada too felt much gratified. The hair stood on their end all over his body, and he was overwhelmed with supreme joy. Having thus heard the exposition of Srimad Bhagavata, Narada, the beloved of the Lord, spoke to them with joined palms as followed in a voice choked with emotion. Narada submitted. Blessed am I, in that I have been favored by you, compassion being foremost in your heart. This day has been attained by me, Lord Sri Hari, who takes away all sins. I account the hearing of Srimad Bhagavata as the best of all righteous courses, O sages rich in ascesis, for through the hearing of it is attained Sri Krishna, who dwells in Vaikuntha. Sutta continued. While Narada, the foremost of the votaries of Lord Vishnu, was speaking in this strain, there actually came wandering about at the moment Sri Sukha, a master of yoga. Presently there appeared on the scene at the end of the exposition, slowly and fondly reciting Srimad Bhagavata, Sri Sukha, the son of Vedavyasa, a veritable moon that occasions a rise in the ocean of spiritual wisdom, who is sated with self-realization and ever looks like a youth of 16 summers. Those present in the assembly rose at once with reverence to behold Sri Sukha, who was possessed of very great splendor, and offered him an exalted seat. Narada, the celestial sage, worshipped him with love, and Sri Sukha, when comfortably seated, spoke as follows. Please listen to his faultless speech. Sri Shuka said, O you devotees, possessing a taste for divine joy, Srimad Bhagavata is the fruit of the wish-yielding tree of Veda, dropped on earth from the mouth of the parrot-like sage Shuka, he says about himself, and is full of the nectar of supreme bliss. It is unmixed sweetness, devoid of rind, seed, or other superfluous matter. Go on drinking this divine nectar again and again till your body consciousness ceases. In this glorious Bhagavata, produced by Veda Vyasa, has been taught that supreme religion, the religion of God worship, the Bhagavata Dharma, as it is called, which is entirely free from all self deception in the shape of desire, including even the desire for moksha, or liberation. Nay, in this has been expounded that absolute reality which can be known only by saints who are free from malice, which is the bestower of bliss and uproots the threefold agony. The threefold agonies being agony caused by bodily distemper or some problem with the body, that which is attributable to natural agencies, and that inflicted by a fellow being. While it is doubtful that God can be speedily captured in one's heart by other means, he can be instantly seized through this work by those blessed persons who have a keen desire to hear it recited. The glorious Bhagavata is the ornament of the Puranas and the wealth of the Vaishnavas. In it stands celebrated the one supreme reality, which is all consciousness, as well as all truth and all bliss, Satchidanandam, free from all impurity in the form of contact with Maya, and which is the goal of Paramahansas, ascetics of the highest order alone. In this Purana, withdrawal from all activity, coupled with spiritual enlightenment, dispassion, and devotion, has been expounded. A man devoutly listening to it, carefully reading it, and given to pondering it, bids fair to get liberated. This nectar, in the shape of the story of Srimad Bhagavata, does not exist in paradise, in Satyaloka, in Kailasa, and even in Vaikuntha. Therefore, quaff it, highly fortunate ones. Never, oh never, cease taking it. Sutta went on. While the glorious, there's a footnote that I think is worth pointing out. So when Shuka himself says that the Bhagavata was dropped on earth from the mouth of the parrot-like sage Shuka, kind of making a pun on his own name, he's referencing a cultural idea that a fruit that has been bitten by a parrot is exceptionally sweet. So he was making a joke, punning off of his own name. So Sutta went on. While the glorious Shuka was speaking as aforesaid, Sri Hari appeared in the midst of the assembly, accompanied by Prahlada, Bali, Udhava, Arjuna, and others. Narada, most of you probably know who these people are. Prahlada and Bali are two asuras, both of them great bhaktas of Vishnu. Udhava was a good friend of Sri Krishna during his avatarana, and of course, so was Arjuna. Narada worshipped him as well as the aforementioned devotees. Beholding Sri Hari, who was now perched on a high seat, cheerful, they presently commenced chanting the divine names and praises before him. Lord Shiva, the source of the universe, accompanied by goddess Parvati, and Brahma, who remained seated on a lotus, arrived on the scene to witness the kirtana. Prahlada held struck the wooden cymbals because of his agility, while Udhava held the brass ones. Narada played upon his lute, his veena. Arjuna, who was a master of tunes, kept up the vocal melody. Indra, the lord of paradise, the ruler of the devas, sounded a wooden tom-tom. The aforesaid Kumara, Sanaka, and his three brothers raised shouts of glory in a melodious voice at intervals in that chorus, where Sri Shuka, the son of Vyasa, stood foremost, giving expression to different emotions by means of charming literary compositions. In the center of that assembly danced like actors that very trio of bhakti, jnana, and vairagya, who were full of great splendor. Sri Hari too was pleased to witness this transcendent kirtana, and presently spoke as follows. I feel highly gratified at this moment through the exposition of Srimad Bhagavata and the kirtana. Ask a boon of your choice of me, who have been won by your devotion. Greatly rejoiced to hear these words of the Lord, they submitted to Sri Hari as follows, their heart moistened with emotion. Our ambition is that in all future sacrificial sessions, consisting of a 7 days exposition of Srimad Bhagavata, you must be present with these devotees of yours. This should be scrupulously fulfilled by you. And saying, Be it so, Sri Hari, the immortal Lord, disappeared. Thereupon Narada bowed in the direction of the feet of the Lord and his companions, as well as to Sri Shuka and other ascetics. All those who had drunk of the nectar in the shape of the exposition of Srimad Bhagavata had their delusion dispelled and, extremely delighted, forthwith dispersed. The celebrated Bhakti, along with her two sons, Jnana and Vairagya, was then installed by Sri Shuka in Srimad Bhagavata as well. Hence, as a result of the Vaishnavas resorting to Srimad Bhagavata, Sri Hari actually occupies their heart. Srimad Bhagavata, they say, loudly proclaims its efficacy to deliver those tormented by the fever of agony caused by poverty, those trampled upon by the devilice of Maya, and those hurled into the ocean of transmigration. Shaunaka submitted, when was Srimad Bhagavata expounded by Sri Shuka for the sake of the king Parikshit? When again was it expounded by Gokarna, and when again by Sanaka and his three brothers for the sake of Narada? Pray resolve this doubt of mine as a matter of fact. Sutta continued, Sri Shuka started his exposition of Srimad Bhagavata on the 9th of the bright fortnight of the month of Bhadrapada, so roughly in August. After 30 years of the Kali age, commencing from the departure of Sri Krishna for his divine realm, had rolled away. After Parikshit's hearing of Srimad Bhagavata, when 200 more years of the Kali age had elapsed, Gokarna, the one born of a cow, commenced his exposition of Srimad Bhagavata on the 9th of the bright half of Ashadha, so roughly in June. When 30 more years of Kali Yuga had elapsed since then, Brahma's sons commenced the exposition on the 9th of the bright fortnight of Kartika, so roughly in October. I have thus told you as aforesaid what I was asked by you, O sinless Shaunaka. The exposition of Srimad Bhagavata and the age of Kali puts an end to the disease of metempsychosis. Drink with reverence, O pious souls, this nectar-like story, which is so dear to Sri Krishna and wipes out all sins, which is the only means to the attainment of liberation in this world and promotes bhakti. What will be gained, as a matter of fact, by associating with worthy men and visiting places of pilgrimage? Beholding even his own servant going out on his errand of taking the life out of dying persons, noose in hand, Yama, the god of punishment or death, it is said, whispers close to his ear, Leave alone those who are enraptured over the Lord's stories, for I am the ruler of other men, but not of the Vaishnavas. O men whose mind is agitated through attachment to the poison-like pleasures of sense, drink the peerless nectar in the form of Srimad Bhagavata, the story narrated by Sri Shuka. Sorry, just a sec. For your spiritual good, even for half a second in this unsubstantial world. Why wander for nothing, O friends, on the wrong path resonant with vicious talks? Emperor Parikshit stands as a witness to corroborate the statement found in our sacred books that mukti follows in the wake of Srimad Bhagavata entering the very ears. He bids fair to attain lordship over Vaikuntha by becoming one with the Lord of Vaikuntha, to whose voice gets joined the story narrated by Sri Shuka immersed in a stream of ecstatic joy. In this way has been imparted by me to you just now a most esoteric truth, the very substance of all conclusions after ransacking a pile of sacred books. There is nothing purer than Srimad Bhagavata, the story narrated by Sri Shuka. Therefore, quaff for the enjoyment of supreme bliss the nectar embodied in the 12 skandhas of Srimad Bhagavata. He who hears an exposition of Srimad Bhagavata in a regular way with devotion, and he who expounds it before a pure-hearted votary of Lord Vishnu, both attain the true reward of hearing or expounding Srimad Bhagavata because of their duly observing the procedure laid down for it. There is nothing which cannot be achieved by them. Thus ends the 6th discourse entitled The Procedure of Hearing and Exposition of Srimad Bhagavata Detailed, forming part of the glory of Srimad Bhagavata, comprised in the Uttarakhanda of the glorious Padma Purana. And that is the end of Srimad Bhagavata Mahatmya. And so now we are ready to start the Srimad Bhagavata Mahapurana itself. In a few minutes, we are going to run out of time for this Zoom meeting. So I guess we can just start going. And if we run out of time, I will pause and everyone can simply rejoin using the same link that you used the first time. Um,
Yes, that's good. Thank
yeah,
you.
that'll work. It'll be in a little over 7 minutes, so we can get started.
And if we can mute our microphones, that would be nice.
Yeah, I can do that actually. I can mute everybody except for myself. Of course, if you need to say something, go ahead and unmute yourself. So, Srimad Bhagavata Mahapurana, Book 1, Discourse 1, Shonaka and
Debla,
others.
real quick.
Yeah,
Sorry.
go ahead.
What I joined a little late. What page are you on on the online version?
Page 1, where it kind of starts. Page 62 in the scanned version. Page
Yes.
1
Okay.
is what it says on the page. Yeah, 62
60.
in the scanned version.
Thanks so much.
Page 1 of the actual Bhagavata Mahapurana, since we finished the Mahatmyam from the Padma Purana. So, Srimad Bhagavata Mahapurana, Book 1, Discourse 1, Shaunaka and other sages interrogate the famous Sutta or Ugrasrava Sutta. We meditate on that transcendent reality from whom this universe springs up, in whom it abides, and into whom it returns, because he is invariably present in all existing things and is distinct from all non-entities, who is self-conscious and self-effulgent, who revealed to Brahma, the very first seer, by his mere will, the Vedas, that cause bewilderment even to the greatest sages, in whom this threefold creation, consisting of sattva, rajas, and tamas, though unreal, appears as real because of the reality of its substratum, even as the sun's rays, which are made up of the element of fire, are mistaken for water in a mirage, water for earth, and earth for water, and whoever excludes Maya by his own self-effulgent glory. In this glorious Bhagavata, produced by the great sage Veda Vyasa, has been taught that supreme religion of God worship, the Bhagavata Dharma, which is entirely free from all self-deception in the shape of desire, including the desire for moksha. Nay, herein has been expounded that absolute reality which can be known only by saints who are free from malice, nay, which is the bestower of supreme bliss and uproots the threefold agony. While it is doubtful that God can be speedily captured in one's heart by other means, he can be instantly seized through this work by those blessed persons who have a keen desire to hear it recited. O ye devotees possessing a taste for divine joy, Srimad Bhagavata is the fruit of the wish-yielding tree of Veda, dropped on earth from the mouth of the parrot-like sage Shuka, and is full of the nectar of supreme bliss. It is unmixed sweetness, devoid of rind, seed, or other superfluous matter. Go on drinking this divine nectar again and again till there is consciousness left in you. Once upon a time, in the forest known as Naimisharanya, modern Nimsar in Oud, a place sacred to Lord Vishnu, Shaunaka and other sages were engaged in a great sacrifice, to be completed in the course of 1,000 years, with a view to realizing the Lord, who is sung in heaven and is the abode of his devotees. One morning, having poured oblations into the sacred fire, the sages paid their respects to the Sutta, and when he had taken his seat, they asked him the following question with due reverence. There's a footnote explaining that Ugrasrava or Shaunaka is called Sutta because it refers to the fact that he was born of a Kshatriya father and a Brahmana mother. The sages said, O sinless Sutta, you have indeed studied and also expounded all the Puranas and Itihasas, as well as the codes of laws, the Dharmashastras. Whatever is known by the divine sage Badarayana, Veda Vyasa, he is also called Badarayana because he had his abode in a grove of jujube trees called Badri trees at Badri Kashrama or Badrinath up in the Himalayas. The foremost among the knowers of Veda, and even by other sages who have realized both the qualified and absolute aspects of the Godhead, you know all that in reality by their grace, which you were able to earn by your guileless and pure heart. For the teachers confide even their profoundest secrets to their beloved pupil. Be pleased to tell us, O long-lived Sutta, that which you have determined through a study of all those sacred books, as the unfailing and easy means to the supreme good of men. O the ornament of holy congregations, in this age of Kali, people are mostly short-lived, slothful, little inclined to tread the path of God realization, most dull-witted, unlucky, and tormented with diseases and other evils. The scriptures, too, are numerous and inculcate not one discipline, but a number of practices and rituals. And besides being too voluminous, they have to be listened to part by part. Therefore, benevolent as you are, draw out by your critical insight their quintessence and declare the same to us who are full of faith, so that our mind may become placid and tranquil. Sutta, God bless you. You know the purpose for which the divine Lord, the protector of his devotees, was born of Devaki, Vasudeva's consort. Dear Sutta, please explain it to us who are keen to hear of the same. For the Lord's descent on this earth is intended for the protection and prosperity of all living beings. Anyone who has fallen into the terrible whirlpool of birth and death can be speedily delivered from the same if he utters his name, even helplessly, for fear itself is afraid of the Lord. Sutta, sages who have taken shelter in his feet and therefore ever abide in perfect calm forthwith purify those who come in contact with them, whereas the waters of the celestial stream Ganga cleanse the heart only by long and continued use, because they are no longer in direct touch with those feet, although they still retain their purifying virtue because of the touch they once had with them. I think we're about to run out of time, so I'm going to pause and close the Zoom meeting and then reopen it. And you can all just click the same link and we can resume.